Good. How are you today? Oh, okay. Yeah, I got to figure out who this was. I got to give it back to him.
Ron, we were talking to Fred Williams the other day. He mentioned you guys go a bit ways back just in this business, Brent's in this business. What do you think of what he's done with Cleveland the past 2 weeks, and particularly defensively, obviously, with that being his background?
Well, I mean, first of all, you watch, if you want to start with their defense and watch how aggressive they are. They're aggressive by nature. You know, it's a high risk, high reward. They're an attacking style, which is a lot of fun to watch. They get after people, and I think it's spilling over to the offensive side. You see, and I, you know, to me, one of the big thrills is watching teams run the ball. They run the ball with an attitude. So he's done a great job in terms of, I think, trying to change their outlook, their attitude, and it's you know, and you see it. You really do. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what they decide to do. But he's doing a good job for them. They're a physical football team.
Ron, what was the play that you called that the team had not had in the game plan that you felt comfortable calling with this defense?
There were a couple of them, Jordan, and you know, they're part of our inventory, so I know our players know it. And as we were going through the game and the flow of the game, I just felt that I needed to call that, even though it wasn't up. It was in our inventory, and I knew we could handle it. And like I said, there was a couple of them, and I'm trying to think back at exactly what specifically were, but I believe one of them was a pressure. And we actually got a play out of it, so I felt pretty good about it. But you know, that's one of the things I really do appreciate when you've got players that have that kind of ability. You know, and starting with Luke, obviously, and then Mike Adams, and you know, and KK, guys that have been here, been in the system for a while, that understand what we do and know how we do it. You can do those things. You can pull, you know, from wherever, you know, whether it was in the week before or 2 weeks before, or it's part of your training camp inventory. You can fall back to, or at least I believe you can. I'll give you an example that we had it happen for us on the offensive side where, you know, something might not be up, and Cam has audible to plays that were in the previous week's game plan. And again, a lot of it just has to do with knowing that you've got those type of guys on your team. You can do those things.
Yeah, Eric Reed said he made the play. I'm not sure if that piques your memory a little bit more. I think it was on a second down, going back from looking at the play for either a 1 yard gain or no gain. I'm wondering if that piques your memory.
No, that wasn't it. There was another one I called. I called a blitz that we got to play out of. So you know, it's those things that you know they're capable of doing, and it's, to me, it's easy to pull back when you've got veteran guys.
I mean, this is kind of a weird question, but you had said, I think you had said that you're comfortable giving more control to Norv if you are tied up, obviously, in other duties now that you're calling plays. But on a more, I guess, microscopic level, do the duties reassign to guys who are maybe like helping with clock management, helping with timeout, situational stuff, and how
those are all things that you know, I ask these guys to speak up, to give me more information. They have to be more aware, and you know, I'm asking a lot of guys, and I really do appreciate it. And I think I gave the example yesterday of you know, Eric's awareness as to what's going on in the field. You know, something happened out there, and I had to deal with the referees, and Eric went ahead, took over, and went right back into play calling mode, and then I came back. But you know, that's what it's kind of expected, is that everybody's, you know, going to have to be a little bit more sharper, you know, and I've always felt that way about Norv anyway. So to me, that's really that's nothing new, to be honest.
More aggressive in the second half play calling, Ron. Some guys have said.
Well, I think again, as the flow of the game calls for certain things, you know, that's the tendency is as things are unfolding, you're going to call it accordingly. And I just felt in certain situations we had an opportunity to attack, and so I did. And there was a couple other ones where I backed off, just knowing that we had to do certain things.
Would you say that, going back to your Chicago days even, I was talking to one of your former players, and he said that you might not call but 3 or 4 defenses the entire season, but y'all just did them well and allowed them to play fast. Is that an example of what you're trying to create?
That's what you're trying to do, is you try to look at what you think fits and what they do well. And you know, it's like when I got the opportunity in San Diego, that was one of the things that I did, was I cut the playbook probably by 45-50%, almost in half. Because again, the worst thing a player can do is think, because then there's tendencies to hesitate. And when we get an opportunity to evaluate this, this season completely, we'll look at things and determine what we'll do going forward, obviously.
When you mentioned instinctive, is that the play you sent in that hadn't been practiced that week? Is that just part of that instinct thing?
Right. Well, it's part of an inventory that you work on through training camp, and I know it was up the previous couple of weeks, and so I just felt that the situation called for that, and so I went with it.
Ron, I guess Julius was named Man of
Yes.
the Year nominee.
This
Why,
is
why
his
would you
song.
say he's Man of the Year?
Well, again, just first of all, knowing who he is as a man. I mean, I've gotten to know him the last couple of years. I mean, I've always known of who he is once he got into the league, but just getting to know him the last couple of years has been a tremendous experience for me, because he's such a good person. And he's one of those guys that he's kind of like E.F. Hutton. When he talks, everybody wants to listen. So it's really kind of cool to watch him, talk to the players, his teammates, but also in light of what he's done in this community and the effect he has. And then most recently what he did during the hurricane, and getting involved and going, not just contributing his name or anything, but going and seeing it and bringing attention and awareness on his own time. I thought that was tremendous. I really did.
Him doing it on the players' day off, how valuable a time that is for
Yes.
the players to
Well,
sacrifice like that.
And the big key, though, Brian, and you're right, because it is a huge sacrifice, for a lot of guys look at it. But he looked at it as a responsibility, and that to me is tremendous. When a young man talks about what his responsibility is in giving back to the community, I think that speaks very well for who he is as a person. And I'm just, I'm just very fortunate and very proud to be able to say that, I was one of the many guys that got a chance to coach him.
It was hard for him. He talked earlier when he was doing hurricane coverage or hurricane relief, how hard it was for him to kind of come out of his shell, but recognize how important it was. Have you, I don't want to say proud, but like how nice has it been to see him, knowing the impact he has in the locker room, kind of in a closed space, be able to kind of share that with other people?
Well, I think it's really cool because of the impact that it does have. And it's funny, we talk about platforms. And as a professional athlete, you have a tremendous platform. And I do agree with what Charles Barkley says. We're not here to raise anybody else's kids, but we are here to be an example. And whether it is young people or older people or just people in the community, we have an opportunity to impact it. And so we got to do it in a positive fashion every opportunity we get. So for Julius, I think he's gotten, personally, just from my observation, I think he's gotten satisfaction and the realization at the same time that he can impact and change things. And he's done a tremendous service, I think, to our community, going out and doing what he did, bringing the attention, and also for a lot of those people, just bringing the hope. I mean, I saw the pictures of the lady that wanted a hug, and he hugged her, and you can see what it meant, and that's that's important. There's so many things we get caught up and wrapped up in, but when something like that happens, I think as a head coach, it really does. I feel good about our guys. I do.
2014, similar, I mean, a little bit different, but what any similarities in your mind?
Well, we put ourselves in the same position, same type of position. It's a matter of now going out and playing football and doing the things that we're capable of and winning, and hopefully it's a thing where we do come together and find, some common, inspiration. I just think there are some similarities in it, Joe, but this team had, in my opinion, had more than what we had in 2014. And that's the hard part for me. That's what makes this tough on me personally, is that there's a lot of good things that we can do, we're capable of. But when you look at it, you can point at each one of those last 4 games, actually 3 of those 4 in my opinion, one play being the difference. And you can pick almost any one of those negative plays we had and say if that play had been different, who knows what the results could have been.
That season, you guys got a spark late when you kind of reconfigured the secondary. Are you hoping these?
Well, reconfigured the secondary, the wide receiving group. Yeah, well, we put speed on the field. That was probably the main motive behind the decision that I made going forward, was I wanted to do things differently. And I thought one of the things that we had to do differently was we had to put some speed on the field in terms of the wide receiver. We had a group of young, enthusiastic defensive backs led by Trey Boston that we had to put on the field, and we got to see them.
Is the hope that these moves this week will create a similar level of spark or boost?
Well, I just, at the time, like I said, I just feel it was best for us, and we'll see what happens.
Back to your play calling defensively, you said you chopped that playbook in half in San Diego. When it comes to play calling, so much is made of just schematics and kind of, offensively, at least being the smartest guy in the room. When it comes to defense, how important is it, like you mentioned, just knowing your guys, sticking to what you're good at, and not making it overcomplicated?
Well, I think if your guys play fast, it's better. See, to me, I've always believed on the defensive side, even though you're attacking, you're reacting as you're attacking. And you can dictate, but you still have to react at some point. And the quicker they react, the quicker they can handle situations and circumstances. So to me, if you limit the thinking, you can be very good at it. I mean, I was very fortunate. I got to watch, probably the greatest middle linebacker in my era, Mike Singletary, play and watch him do it. And the thing that was always impressive to me, and I see a lot of similarities in Luke, is the way Mike got the information to everybody on the field. The other 10 guys, I mean, Mike could literally tell every 10 guys what they were doing pre-snap. And when you know where you're supposed to go, you play fast. That's what you want to do, is just play fast.
I watched a little bit of in the second half of you and Coach Russ interacting a little bit. Obviously, Luke's headset and Steve Russ's headset are mic'd up together, so you guys are all communicating in a triangle, I guess. But when doing that, first of all, getting to do that again with a linebacker like that, what's that like, first and foremost? And second, at what point in Luke's career, was it right away or as the years went by, that you guys started giving him the autonomy to control some of the stunts on the line?
Well, I think Luke's always had that autonomy. I think probably by the end of his rookie year, he was handling things pretty doggone good. And sometimes he's reluctant to do it because, I think he had a respect for the things that we do. But I've always felt that if the middle linebacker, and it just goes back to my playing days, watching Mike Singletary do it, when you have a guy that you trust enough to do it, you've got to be willing to do it. I had a guy in San Diego, Stephen Cooper, who was maybe one of the smartest guys I've ever coached, that I could literally point at him, basically tell him, you make the call based on what you see. And he put us in the best defense that he thought was out there. When you can get guys that can do that and handle that, it helps everybody. It helps everybody play fast.
Rob, what have you noticed? What have you noticed about how the veteran and older guys on this team have, I guess, passed down a mantra of professionalism to some of the younger players that come in?
I think, well, first of all, I mean, I see it firsthand in the secondary room, just watching Mike Adams and Eric Reed put their arms around our young players. You watch them with Dante and Rashawn, and you just know that that's a good thing. You watch, Greg Olson talk to the tight ends, both Chris and Ian and Alex Armour for that matter, and you see those guys, kind of follow. I think that's important because when you have guys that are winners, that have always been winners, trying to pass down winning ways, hopefully the young guys learn, and they learn quickly because they're going to be a big part of what we do, what this team wants to do going forward too.
So that's, would you say, especially since you've been here, because it's been a lot of the same core guys, that's established, I guess, some continuity that'll hopefully stay once these guys are gone?
Well, that's what you hope for. I mean, you look at the offensive line and you look at the things that, we had when I first got here in terms of, Jordan Gross, and then from Jordan it became Ryan, and from Ryan it could become Trey, or it could become Taylor or Daryl or somebody like that. So you always want to have that succession, to keep the room strong. And when you have a guy that's of that ilk, that's a quality player, that's a Pro Bowl caliber player, as the lead dog, that's huge.
I know last Sunday was a different situation. How much are you looking forward to calling plays this coming Sunday? Like, it seems like you get more animated when you talk about.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's definitely different. I don't have a lot of time right now because I literally go from one meeting to another. I go from one part of football to another part of football constantly. So it's you wonder how guys are able to do it. And I will say this too. I had the great fortune of watching Norv do it when we were in San Diego, and he seemed to handle it pretty doggone well. So, hopefully I learned.
You've obviously spent a lot of time with the Browns offense. What does it look like? What's your biggest, I don't want to say biggest fear, but what's the biggest thing that you have to be careful of as a defensive play caller against this offense?
Well, they run the ball well, and we've got to be stout up front. They're ninth in the league in rushing, and they've got a very good rusher in Chubb. I think the thing we got to do is be able to contain it and slow it down. They do run some play action, and Baker Mayfield's one of those guys that he gets outside the pocket. That's where you can get into trouble. You go back to last week's game and you look what happened when Jamison got outside the pocket. He accounted for 45 of their rushing yards on 5 rushes, averaging 9 yards. You contain him and keep him in the pocket, he doesn't get a chance to scramble and throw 2 touchdown passes against us. He doesn't get the first downs that he gets. So again, being able to stop their run and then contain their quarterback, that's my concern, just watching the things that they do.
Obviously,
Captain Munnerlyn kind of compared him to, said that he reminded him of Phillip Rivers. Is there anybody that Baker Mayfield reminds you of?
I liken him to Jim McMahon a little bit more than Phillip. I've been around both Jim and Phillip. I, from my opinion, I think he's a little bit more like Jim McMahon or Brett Favre. I mean, he's a gunslinger. He really is, and he brings energy to his team. Yes.
Obviously, circumstances were different the first time around with you and Norv, but are you having kind of a moment where you consider how full circle this kind of is with Norv now, again, assuming a more control offensively with you having to take control defensively?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of cool. The neat thing about it, again, is having somebody like Coach around that, I can rely on and fall back to. And we've talked a couple of times the last couple of days about stuff, and he's been great. He really has. And, I feel very fortunate. And again, hopefully we can, put it all together and see what happens.
Before you go, any update on Cam on the shoulder?
No, other than the fact that he did the things that he normally does on a Thursday. He was active, moved around well, did all of his stretching and everything, and then he took the reps that we had set up for him in practice. And I guess I heard where Norv says he expects him to play because he said he's going to play. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, guys.
Is that not enough for you?
Huh?
Is that not enough for you?
What?
What Cam says, Coach?
Absolutely. I believe what he said.